Lin Chia opened his mouth, speaking somewhat hoarsely. Ken. Originally Lin Chia wasn't clear, but now he could see completely that the return of Ling Bao Tianzuan was inevitable. If nothing else, without Ling Bao Tianzuan, they would either have died under Zeus's omnipotent scepter, or been completely banished to the end of space-time, spending the rest of their lives in silence. Ling Bao Tianzuan was the hope of Great Xia. Then in the future, will Bailey Pang Pang never return? After remaining silent for a long time, Lin Chia finally gathered the courage to ask the question he most wanted to ask. Ling Bao Tianzuan looked at Lin Chia for a long time and said, "Whether Bailey Pang Pang or Ling Bao Tianzuan, these are merely identities. All his memories still remain in this poor Taoist's mind, and a corner of this poor Taoist's soul will always belong to Bailey Pang Pang. When everything is settled, if this poor Taoist were to live once more as Bailey Pang Pang, what would be wrong with that?" Ling Bao Tianzuan gazed into Lin Chia's eyes, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. Lin Chia stood frozen in place. "We'll talk about future matters in the future." Ling Bao Tianzuan shook his head and turned to continue walking deeper into the dark ancestor stone array. Lin Chia took a deep breath, stepped forward to follow with an indescribable feeling in his heart. This feeling wasn't entirely unpleasant. After all, he could sense that Bailey Pang Pang's shadow still existed within Ling Bao Tianzuan, which meant he hadn't completely disappeared. Ling Bao Tianzuan had also said that when everything was over, Bailey Pang Pang might still have a chance to return. Although asking the mighty Ling Bao Tianzuan to voluntarily become that foolish son of a landlord again seemed somewhat unrealistic, at least there was a glimmer of hope. The flames surrounding Ling Bao Tianzuan gradually dispelled the darkness of the stone array. Wearing a Taoist robe, he walked while calculating something, sometimes turning, sometimes looking back, sometimes circling clockwise around a huge stone 8 or 9 times. Lin Chia followed honestly behind him, not missing a step. To outsiders, this scene would make these two appear mentally unstable, but what Lin Chia was thinking about was those scenes from Journey to the West. Perhaps they were all true. They walked like this through the giant stone array for about 10 minutes. Lin Chia still couldn't see the edge of the array. These enormous stones seemed endless, appearing around them no matter which way they went. However, after Ling Bao Tianzuan stepped into a certain giant stone, the environment suddenly changed. The originally dense standing giant stones all disappeared, and the view instantly opened up. The huge stone blocks under their feet turned into soil and grassland, bathed in cold moonlight as if they had arrived at a human prairie. In the distance of the prairie stood a bare large tree, quietly towering. Above the tree in the night sky, a bright full moon seemed to be held up by dense branches, emitting a serene light. Dark night, bright moon, bare tree, prairie. This scene was like an eternal painting that had existed in time for who knows how long. Standing in the distance, Lin Chia felt a sense of vastness and antiquity washing over him. This is the deepest part of the stone array, which was once the residence of the Dark Ancestor, Ling Bao Tianzuan calmly replied. Lin Chia stared at the bare tree trunk, his eyes slightly narrowed, seeming to gaze at something in the distance by moonlight. After a moment he asked puzzledly, "So, is it possible for us to meet the Dark Ancestor here?" "Impossible." Ling Bao Tianzuan shook his head. "Although this is the Dark Ancestor's residence, that was in ancient times. Now that the ancestral god mythology has declined, the Dark Ancestor should have long disappeared. This is just an empty Dark Ancestor domain." Lin Chia's expression became somewhat strange. After hesitating for a moment, he pointed toward the bare tree in the distance. "Then, who is that figure under the tree?" "Olympus." Si Xiaonan stood on an uninhabited mountain peak, looking down at the giant shadow hidden deep in the valley below, her eyes slightly narrowed. "Using Lucifer to block the seraph, then using Great Xia to destroy the Temple of Gods, forcing Brahma onto his own pirate ship. Zeus has gathered 2 supreme-level combat forces for himself in one breath." "What a good calculation," she murmured. Although she hadn't personally witnessed the battle between Michael and Lucifer, she could be almost certain that Lucifer was no match for Michael. But even so, with 3 supreme gods stationed here, even Michael couldn't do anything to Olympus. Who could have imagined that while other divine countries were still fighting and killing, Zeus had already secretly laid such a big trap, giving the originally fragmented Olympus such powerful backing. Just as Si Xiaonan was analyzing and calculating, she seemed to sense something and suddenly looked up at the sky. Although it was daytime, a golden ripple strangely appeared on the moon shadow hidden in the sky. This golden ripple disappeared in a flash. If not carefully discerned, it would be impossible to notice. But the terrifying divine power fluctuation contained within couldn't escape the perception of a main god. Michael returned to the moon? Si Xiaonan's face grew increasingly gloomy. Could it be that something has happened on the moon as well? This was undoubtedly bad news for Great Xia. As the world's strongest combat force standing in opposition to the Chronos mythology, as long as Michael remained on Earth, he could directly intimidate Olympus. Even with 3 supreme beings stationed there, Zeus wouldn't dare to make any moves. But if Michael left Earth, it meant that the sharp thorns stuck in Zeus's throat had disappeared. Now most of Great Xia's combat forces had been banished by Zeus, with only 2 Tianzuan remaining. If Olympus and the Chronos system made a move now, Great Xia would be in a very precarious situation. Si Xiaonan kept a solemn face, her mind racing rapidly. After a moment, a gleam flashed in her eyes, and with a wave of her hand across her face, she transformed back into the appearance of an Olympian lesser god. She stepped forward, lightly leaped, and landed directly toward the giant shadow rolling in the valley. As if sensing Si Xiaonan's arrival, the giant shadow slowly rose from the smoke and dust, outlining a huge Buddha statue with 4 faces and 8 arms. One of the cracked faces was facing Si Xiaonan's direction, its expression neither sad nor happy. Those narrowed eyes calmly looked down at her, followed by a deep voice sounding beside her ear. What matter? Si Xiaonan paused for a moment, then respectfully bowed and said, Lord Zeus sent me to ask, how is your recovery going? Not yet healed. Still a brief answer. You've been recovering here for several days and you're still not healed? The disguised lesser god spoke with apparent displeasure. The God King is not very satisfied with your recovery progress, and specifically sent me to check on you. Hearing these words, Brahma's cracked Buddha-like face lowered slightly, and the eyes within his narrow slits gradually grew cold. A wound to the origin. How could it heal so easily? He's still not satisfied. Terrifying supreme divine power surged from Brahma's body, causing the entire valley to violently shake. If he hadn't broken his promise first, how could my temple of the sky gods have been destroyed by Great Xia? How dare he command me? Feeling the supreme anger coming toward him, the lesser god's face showed fear. He bowed his head and spoke bitterly. I'm just delivering a message from the God King. Why take it out on me? He paused, then continued. However, the God King also said that before your temple of the sky gods attacked Great Xia, he did promise to provide support, but didn't specify when. The God King worried that even with 2 divine nations joining forces, victory against Great Xia wasn't certain. So he took a risk and went alone to the Cthulhu ruins to seek a guaranteed path to victory. After all, he wanted to minimize casualties for both our divine nations. But the God King never expected that by the time he arrived, the temple of the sky gods had already been destroyed. This wasn't the God King breaking his word, it was. He fell silent for a moment but still finished his sentence. It was that he overestimated your temple of the sky gods. Hearing these last words, all 4 of Brahma's Buddha faces opened their eyes simultaneously, and thunderous rage filled the valley. The surging divine power compressed around the lesser god, seemingly about to tear him into pieces. He pretended to wail in pain, glancing toward one of the highest peaks, a hint of cunning flashing in his eyes. Then he opened his eyes wide in anger and shouted at Brahma. Brahma, I respect you as India's supreme being, which is why I've shown you such courtesy. After all, what does your temple's destruction have to do with Olympus? You were humiliated by the primordial heavenly lord, so you come to Olympus to vent? Do you really think we're easy to bully? As the lesser god spoke, a thick bolt of lightning cut through the clouds, instantly appearing behind her. Zeus snorted coldly, stepping onto the mountain peak. Countless lightning bolts fell, directly suppressing Brahma's supreme divine power, his face extremely grim. You dare harm my people on my territory? Zeus said in a deep voice. Zeus. Brahma raged, slowly raising his 8 arms as fierce killing intent poured out. You broke your promise first, causing my temple's destruction, and now you dare send someone to humiliate me? Zeus narrowed his eyes and turned to look at his subordinate. The lesser god's face turned pale as he spoke anxiously. I never humiliated him. I was only following your orders to inquire about his injuries. He was still full of resentment like before and I couldn't stand it, so I defended you a little. He briefly recounted their conversation, adding some embellishments. There wasn't much insulting content, except for the overestimated the temple remark, which while somewhat insulting resonated with Zeus's own thoughts. From Zeus's perspective, the lesser god was indeed defending him and Olympus. Zeus stared grimly at Brahma, whose divine power was surging. After calmly thinking for a moment, he suppressed the killing intent in his heart and spoke as calmly as possible. I understand the situation now. It's just a misunderstanding. Since he was disrespectful to you, I'll punish him when we return. After all, we're in the same boat now, and if we fall out with each other, it won't be good for anyone. Don't you agree? Hearing this, the furious Brahma gradually calmed down. Without his divine nation or his origin power, Olympus was his best choice to resist the great Xia heavenly lord's pursuit. Until he could fully utilize Zeus, no matter how unwilling he felt, he had to suppress those feelings. After a long silence, Brahma coldly glanced at the lesser god without speaking, then his form gradually disappeared into the valley's dust. Let's go, Zeus said, turning to walk back to his peak as Brahma vanished. The lesser god looked deeply in the direction where Brahma had disappeared, then followed behind Zeus. God King, Brahma has rebellion in his heart and may be a threat to you. Do we really need to continue tolerating him? The lesser god couldn't help asking. If he's just a homeless dog. If Olympus didn't need the deterrence of a supreme power, I would have killed him with my own hands long ago, Zeus said coldly. I never expected that after kindly sheltering him, he would be so ungrateful. The lesser god thought for a moment, then carefully reminded him. But God King, we originally needed him because you and Lucifer alone weren't enough to resist the combined forces of Great Xia's two heavenly lords and Michael. Now that Michael has returned to the moon, do we really still need him? Hearing this, Zeus raised an eyebrow, silently calculating. What you say seems to make sense, Zeus said thoughtfully. As long as Michael wasn't present, even if Great Xia's two heavenly lords attacked Olympus together, he and Lucifer would be able to hold them off. Looking at it this way, perhaps Brahma's presence wasn't essential after all? Even so, killing Brahma at this point would be somewhat risky. Let's observe a bit longer. After confirming that Michael cannot return to Earth, we can secretly kill Brahma, Zeus said. God King, you've seen the hatred Brahma harbors toward you. Although he's been drawn into the war with Great Xia, he hasn't been tainted by the Cthulhu gods. When it comes to the final moment, whether he'll stand with us against Great Xia and Michael is uncertain. If we wait until his injuries are fully healed and he simply turns against us and disappears like Nyx, we'll not only lose an ally but gain a hidden enemy. Moreover, it would be better if he simply left Olympus, but I fear he might betray us at a critical moment during battle. The lesser god spoke with deep concern. Zeus's expression grew increasingly grim. After the lesser god's words, he suddenly felt that keeping Brahma, a powerful supreme being with rebellion in his heart, in Olympus was indeed risky. His thoughts raced. I'll think about it more. Zeus didn't immediately conclude but fell into deep thought. Si Xiaonan didn't press further. At this point, the seed of doubt had been deeply planted in Zeus's mind, and she believed that everything she had done would influence Zeus's judgment to the greatest extent. Zeus returned to the top of his peak, where many of Olympus's major gods had already gathered to begin today's divine council. Zeus stood before the golden throne about to speak, when from the corner of his eye he saw an elderly black figure slowly ascending the mountain from below, bringing with him a surge of divine anger. The Olympian gods present seemed to sense something, suddenly turning their heads toward the direction of the mountain below, their eyes filled with shock. It's the old god king. The old god king has actually returned? Since the mist descended upon the world over 100 years ago, he has never returned to Olympus. Why has he suddenly come back now? And at such a critical moment? As the gods discussed, Zeus's expression was extremely unpleasant. He stared at the direction below the mountain, light flickering in the depths of his eyes, his thoughts unknown. Greetings to the old god. The Olympian gods, sensing the approaching supreme presence, respectfully attempted to bow. But before they could finish their words, their forms suddenly froze, trapped within time itself. At this moment, the many major gods at the peak of Mount Olympus all stared uniformly toward the direction of the mountain below, motionless as statues. Tap tap tap. Footsteps sounded as an old man in black clothing, supporting himself with a cane, appeared ghost-like at the mountain peak. A brilliant river of time flowed in his eyes, intertwining into a circular ring where head met tail. Within this mystery, an unprecedented fury poured forth. With a single gesture he had stopped the flow of time for all the major gods. The only one who could move freely within his domain was Zeus. Zeus looked at the figure of the old man in black, his expression fluctuating between light and dark. After a moment of hesitation he finally spoke in a deep voice. "Father." Whoosh. Boom. Before Zeus could finish speaking, his form was struck heavily as if by a cane, and he was violently sent flying backward. Zeus's tall, sturdy body flew like a cannonball past the golden throne, instantly pulverizing a mountaintop with a deafening boom. Throughout the entire process, Kronos hadn't moved half a step from his original position. He simply stood there quietly, slight ripples of time undulating around him, as if someone from the past had suddenly reached out to strike Zeus. His gloomy face showed no change as he watched Zeus's flying form. Zeus's body crashed through several mountain peaks before finally becoming deeply embedded in a rock face. As dust filled the air, he slowly raised his head, his face extremely unpleasant. "Father, you." Just as he opened his mouth, time around him strangely reversed. His body flowed backward past the mountain peaks he had shattered, forcibly returning to the mountaintop in front of the golden throne. By the time he realized what had happened, he was standing before the old man in black again. Simultaneously, a cane struck heavily against his chest. Terrifying power surged from within the cane, propelling his body through the air until he crashed against the back of the golden throne. The cane pressed against Zeus's chest, causing fine spiderweb cracks to appear on the throne's backrest. Those furious time god pupils stared at Zeus, the terrifying supreme divine might pressing down heavily on his heart. "Do you know what you're doing?" Kronos asked in a deep voice. Zeus gritted his teeth as more and more cracks spread across the golden throne. He forcibly resisted Kronos's power and spoke hoarsely, "Father, I'm doing this all for Olympus. Now Olympus has become the only divine realm in the world. Just give me a little more time and I can spread Olympus's followers throughout the world." "Fool." Kronos cursed angrily. "Is your brain stuffed with muscle? How dare you get entangled with those things from the Cthulhu mythos? Do you know what they are? I've grown old, so I handed the position of God King to you, letting you lead Olympus toward glory. And what have you done? You're leading this divine realm toward the abyss. I don't care how you fight internally with Nyx, how you struggle for power, or how you deal with other divine realms, but getting involved with those things is seeking death." Zeus seemed to have his temper ignited as well. His already fierce nature was like a powder keg that had been lit, with dense lightning dancing around his body. "They're nothing but remnants of mythology crawling out of ruins. Once I have enough followers I can kill them." Zeus growled. "How can one become the final only winner without taking risks? Kill them?" Over 100 years ago, a single awakened key to the gate nearly exterminated all life on Earth with its mist. When the three-pillar gods fully awaken, they could destroy Olympus with a mere thought. What do you have that could kill them? Do you think you're stronger than Yharnam was back then? Kronos was truly angered now. He punched Zeus's nose bridge, the terrifying force instantly making Zeus's mind go blank. Crimson blood trickled down as Zeus's eyes gradually regained focus. Kronos's helpless voice continued. "When we went to the moon to seal the Cthulhu gods, you hadn't yet become supreme and weren't involved. I can understand that you don't know how terrifying they are. This time, you must rein in that arrogant nature of yours." He removed his cane from Zeus's chest, and the latter fell to the ground from midair, breathing heavily. Kronos glanced at him and his aged voice slowly sounded. "From now on I will take control of Olympus again. You can reflect well on the cliff face." As Kronos finished speaking he turned and walked away. The many major gods around who had been frozen in time finally recovered, looking somewhat bewildered at the surrounding devastation, not knowing what had happened. Zeus sat awkwardly on the golden throne, his eyes fixed on the departing figure of the old man, with unprecedented fury rising in his heart. He slowly stood up as several thick bolts of lightning fell from the clouds, striking him precisely. Surging lightning laws instantly filled every corner of the mountain peak. Sorry, father. Zeus wiped the blood from his face, his imposing figure standing tall in a sea of lightning, emanating a terrifying aura. His eyes narrowed as he spoke calmly. You've grown old. Olympus should still be left to me. Sensing the cold killing intent from behind, Kronos paused his steps. Having walked halfway down the mountain, he looked back toward the peak. Those aged eyes first showed astonishment, then deep disappointment. You are planning to kill your father? Kronos shook his head. Even if I am old, do you really think that you alone can kill me? Zeus stood tall at the mountain peak, his terrifying supreme divine might causing all the major gods around to retreat. As long as they had their wits about them, they would never voluntarily get involved in this turbulent situation. Zeus clenched his fists, looking down at the old man in black on the mountainside. He stomped his foot heavily on the ground and his form shot forward like lightning. Don't you understand yet? Your speed means nothing to me. Kronos leaned on his cane with both hands, tapping it lightly on the ground. A ripple of time spread out and Zeus, who was flying in midair, seemed to be struck heavily, stumbling and crashing into the cliff. Although repeatedly injured, Zeus's robust and solid physique was not just for show. Combined with Kronos holding back, he wasn't too severely wounded. Rage erupted from his eyes as a black lightning bolt containing the essence of destruction fell toward Kronos's head like a sword of judgment. Kronos's figure blurred and instantly disappeared from his spot. The black lightning pierced through the mountainside, instantly vaporizing all soil and seawater below. The next moment, a cane struck heavily at the top of Zeus's head. Zeus's pupils contracted sharply as he narrowly avoided it, his form transforming into lightning and retreating several miles, his face extremely gloomy. If that cane had landed squarely, his consciousness would likely have been instantly stunned, and he would have been dragged away and imprisoned by Kronos. Although they were both supreme beings, there were differences among the supreme. Zeus knew clearly that he had almost no chance of defeating Kronos. After all, the latter was a terrifying existence whose combat power nearly rivaled Michael. Zeus's eyes flashed with gleaming light as he shouted toward a distant valley. Brahma! What are you waiting for if not now? After a brief silence, the distant valley began to shake violently, and a huge four-faced Buddha statue slowly rose. As its eyes slightly opened, everything around alternated between reality and illusion, appearing incredibly mystical. Early on, when Kronos had just entered Olympus, Brahma had already sensed him, but facing this father-son situation he naturally stayed as far away as possible, concealing his presence to the extreme. Now that Zeus called out, although he was extremely reluctant, he had no choice but to act. Kronos didn't seem surprised by Brahma's appearance. His eyes, flowing with circles of time, glanced lightly at him. Brahma, are you sure you want to be my enemy? The law of time surged wildly, enveloping Brahma's figure. Feeling the sharp killing intent in those eyes, Brahma hesitated. Although if they really fought, Brahma wouldn't fear Kronos. He was currently in an injured state. Facing Kronos's time law, he probably wouldn't gain any advantage and might even aggravate his injuries. Brahma, what are you waiting for? Have you forgotten our agreement? Zeus immediately spoke up when he saw Brahma hesitate. Your injury was left by the heavenly court's origin, right? Kronos spoke calmly. After I subdue this rebellious son, you can continue to heal in my Olympus. When your injuries recover, you can stay or leave as you wish. I won't interfere or force you to do anything. If necessary, I can even mediate between you and Gratia. How does that sound? Hearing these words, Brahma was immediately tempted. Although Zeus could provide him protection, that was only to utilize his combat power to deal with other forces. But Kronos could offer the same treatment and without requiring anything in return. Brahma was very clear about Zeus's attitude toward him. Deep down he wanted nothing more than to tear Zeus to pieces, so how could he truly want to help him? Now that he had a better option, why should he still stand with Zeus? Compared to Zeus, he was more willing to trust Kronos, the old god king. All right. After only a moment's hesitation, Brahma nodded and returned to his valley. Seeing his hard-won ally so easily turned, Zeus's eyes widened in anger, his chest heaving violently as intense killing intent surged in his heart. Brahma, he growled through gritted teeth. His relationship with Brahma already had cracks, And now Brahma chose to betray him right to his face, undoubtedly trampling his dignity underfoot. Since you're unwilling to go to the cliff to reflect, then don't blame me for imprisoning you under the mountain. Having easily resolved the issue with Brahma, Kronos turned his gaze back to Zeus and spoke casually. Feeling that terrifying law of time, Zeus's expression became extremely grim. He gritted his teeth as if making some kind of determination, and turned to flee toward the sky. The moment he moved, countless lightning bolts crashed down from the clouds, covering the entire mountain peak. Kronos frowned, tapping his cane on the ground again, freezing all the lightning in midair. In this brief moment, Zeus, transformed into lightning, flew hundreds of kilometers away, disappearing from sight. But this meant nothing to Kronos. "Protect the divine peak, I'll be back shortly," Kronos said to the many major gods nearby, then vanished from his spot. The next moment he appeared directly above the fleeing Zeus. Zeus couldn't see how he appeared, as if he had been waiting there long ago. The cane struck precisely on Zeus's back, the terrifying force sending him crashing from the sky into the ocean. "In these 100 years your wings have indeed hardened." Kronos stood leaning on his cane, looking at the lightning-filled ocean, speaking calmly. "Today I will teach you a good lesson." Zeus's figure didn't emerge from the sea surface, but like a giant snake of lightning, instantly darted away along the seabed, the dense lightning turning the entire sea into a surging deep blue. Kronos's figure vanished from his spot again. The two figures, starting from Olympus, continued their chase. No matter what method Zeus used or how fast he moved, Kronos could always appear right next to him in the next moment, delivering a heavy blow. Even so, Kronos didn't deliver fatal strikes. After all, Zeus was his child and the supreme being of his Olympus, so he deliberately held back. Zeus fled for who knows how long. Covered in blood, he crashed through a desolate island and stood awkwardly on a sinking rock, his eyes fixed on the slowly approaching old man in black, gasping for breath. His body was approaching its limit. This old man, though nearly at death's door from age, how could he still be so strong? "You can't escape anymore. Come back to Olympus with me," Kronos said slowly, leaning on his cane. Zeus's face was extremely ugly. Just then, a voice drifted from behind him. "Is that so?" The moment this voice appeared, Kronos narrowed his eyes. Behind Zeus, a figure of an angel with 6 black wings slowly descended from the sky, looking at him somewhat mockingly. "The one who can't escape should be you, right?" "Lucifer," Kronos snorted coldly, about to say something more when his expression suddenly changed. He seemed to sense something and abruptly looked up at the sky. In the churning mist, a mass of black tentacles, writhing like a dark cloud, had silently appeared above him. Dark Ancestor Stone Array. A human figure? Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord frowned, carefully observing under the tree for a long time. "Where is there a human figure? You can't see it?" Lin Chia stood stunned. In his vision, under the bare branches, there was indeed someone standing. Although the distance was too far for Lin Chia to see his features clearly, he knew it was a man leaning against the tree trunk, gazing up at the stars in the sky. Lin Chia described what he saw to Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord, who frowned in thought for a moment before saying, "Let's go closer." The two walked through the grassland under the night, step by step approaching the bare tree trunk. In Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord's eyes, it was still empty, but in Lin Chia's eyes, the figure gradually became clearer. It was a completely black man, without a face, without clothes, even without thickness, as if he were just a shadow projected onto the tree trunk. But looking carefully at the base of the tree, there was no shadow, so where did this shadow come from? The shadow seemed to notice Lin Chia and his companion's arrival, slightly turning its head, its pitch-black face staring at the two. With no facial features, Lin Chia couldn't see his expression, but vaguely his form seemed to tremble for a moment. Spirit Treasure of Later Age Great Xia seeks audience. May the Dark Ancestor appear. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord stood under the tree, still unable to see the shadow, but respectfully raised his hands in salutation and said. After these words, the shadow remained motionless, and from the direction his face was pointing, he seemed to be looking at Lin Chia. No response. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord looked around in surprise. With Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord's current power and realm, there were almost no things in this world that could confuse him, but the bizarre situation before him was truly beyond his understanding. A shadow that only Lin Chia could see but he couldn't? While Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord was puzzled, Lin Chia's eyes were also fixed on the shadow on the tree trunk, seemingly staring at each other. For some reason as he approached this bare tree, a strange sense of familiarity suddenly rose in his heart. He carefully sensed the source of this feeling and finally locked onto the night origin within his body. Origin? Lin Chia seemed to realize something and unconsciously raised his finger toward the shadow on the tree trunk. At the same time, the shadow also paused, hesitated for a moment, but still extended its finger, similarly pointing toward Lin Chia. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord saw Lin Chia's movement and instinctively wanted to stop him, but his hand stopped midway. He stared intently at Lin Chia, whose eyes showed no trace of being bewitched, only a kind of mysterious spirit. As Lin Chia's fingertip touched the shadow on the tree trunk, his body imperceptibly trembled. Chia. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord's hand shot out like lightning, grabbing Lin Chia's arm and pulling him back dozens of meters. Lin Chia's body fell limply into his arms, his eyes already closed. At the same time, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from within him. The moonlight in the night sky was covered by darkness, and the entire world became completely devoid of light. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord frowned at this scene, his left hand forming a Taoist seal, about to press it on Lin Chia's brow, when the latter's limp body suddenly transformed into a streak of darkness and disappeared without a trace. What evil creature! Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord shouted angrily, a primordial infinite void rapidly spreading beneath his feet, as if to swallow this pitch-black world. No need to be nervous. Lin Chia's form floated in the darkness, his eyes still tightly closed, a deep voice emanating from his throat. I cannot harm him, he actively invited me to enter his body. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord stood firmly on the primordial infinite void, his Taoist robe fluttering lightly in the wind. He did not withdraw but narrowed his eyes and continued. Who are you? I am the Dark Ancestor, a remnant soul. The Dark Ancestor's remnant soul? Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord paused. If you are the Dark Ancestor, why occupy a junior's body? Why not appear in person? I said he let me in. For some reason the Dark Ancestor's voice sounded somewhat helpless. I am now just a shadow without a physical form, how can I appear? This person carries my origin so he can see me and even allows me to reappear in the world through his body. Otherwise I couldn't even speak with you. But rest assured my current state cannot last long. I will soon leave his body and return to the tree trunk. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord carefully examined Lin Chia floating in the darkness, and after confirming he wasn't lying, temporarily withdrew the primordial infinite void, his expression softening somewhat. Are all the deities in your later age as powerful as you? The Dark Ancestor couldn't help but marvel. Your aura is already not far from mine at my peak. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord hesitated for a moment. Not all are like this poor Taoist. The Dark Ancestor nodded slightly. You have cultivated your realm to the extreme, what you lack is only the power of faith. It's strange, countless ages ago, another deity from a later age came here. His cultivation realm was inferior to yours, but the power of faith was very rich. With your current power plus the blessing of worship you should not lack faith. Why is the power of faith so scarce in you? Could it be that all living beings in the world have been destroyed? Not entirely. Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord paused. It's just that in the current world not many people believe in us, and we are unwilling to forcibly gather believers, so we cultivate ourselves with limited faith. I see. May I ask, Dark Ancestor, who was that deity from the later age who came here years ago? He had no origin so he couldn't communicate with me. He just circled around these giant stone arrays. Those beside him called him king. I believe his name was Gilgamesh. A look of confusion appeared in Spirit Treasure Celestial Lord's eyes. He also crossed the wall of time and space to come here? How did he come? When he explored this place, the ancestral god temple was still on Earth. It was only later that some mishap occurred, causing it to drift in time and space. Mishap? Who caused it? Logically, in that era the mist had not yet invaded and living beings still existed. Even without human faith in the ancestral gods, those animals and plants would still provide faith continuously. Even if many ancestral gods' power was far from before, they shouldn't have been directly banished to the end of time and space. The Dark Ancestor was silent for a moment, then slowly spoke. There were several monsters from outside the world. They wanted to invade the ancestral god temple. We entangled with them for nearly 100 years. Unfortunately, our strength had already weakened. Although we barely repelled them, the ancestral god temple was severely damaged and drifted into the crevices of time and space. Monster from outside the world? Ling Bao Tianzuan immediately reacted. Cthulhu? Is that what you call them? The Dark Ancestor raised an eyebrow. They're back? At this point, Ling Bao Tianzuan had basically understood this history. It seemed the Cthulhu pantheon's invasion happened much earlier than he had imagined. However, during their first invasion, they encountered the ancestral gods who hadn't completely fallen yet and were directly driven back. Those ancient ruins on Earth today should have been left from that time. During the second invasion, Heaven, which was the strongest divine nation at the time, took action. Urand, along with several other supreme beings on Earth, used Heaven's origin and the power of their entire nation as a sacrifice to seal those Cthulhu deities who had survived the first invasion into the moon. Only the three pillar gods escaped and recuperated deep within the Earth. What they were facing now was the counterattack from the revived three pillar gods, or possibly the third invasion of the Cthulhu mythology. The difference from the previous two times was that this time, Earth had no ancestral gods, no heaven, and even other divine nations had withered away. Only Great Xia still maintained relatively complete fighting strength. Ling Bao Tianzuan thought for a moment and briefly described Earth's current situation, including how they had been banished here. After listening, the Dark Ancestor frowned deeply. No wonder the power of faith has disappeared precipitously since 100 years ago. They actually killed almost all living beings on Earth? Perhaps they learned lessons from the previous two invasions, Ling Bao Tianzuan speculated. They must have discovered the importance of faith to Earth's deities, so they were willing to let the key to the gate fall into death slumber in order to use the mist to slaughter all sources of faith. They believed that as long as they extinguished the source of faith, Earth's deities would no longer be able to resist them. That should be the case, the Dark Ancestor nodded in agreement. Having experienced two failed invasions, the three pillar gods had obviously become smarter. They not only knew to first slaughter the sources of faith but also knew how to use temptation to win over and divide some of Earth's native deities, making them work for their cause. Odin and Lucifer were examples of this. If the three pillar gods were truly allowed to gain momentum and release the many Cthulhu deities from the moon, then no one on Earth would be able to stand up and resist the attack of their entire pantheon. The Dark Ancestor sighed deeply. Now that Earth's living beings are suffering, we have lost our faith, and maintaining our own existence is extremely difficult. I'm afraid we can only rely on you later generation deities. Ling Bao Tianzuan smiled bitterly. By the way, come with me, the Dark Ancestor said to Ling Bao Tianzuan as if remembering something. Lin Chia, who had been floating in the darkness, slowly descended to the ground. He stepped into the Dark Ancestor's stone array, his form flickering before disappearing. Ling Bao Tianzuan followed closely behind. With his eyes closed, Lin Chia easily passed through the Dark Ancestor's stone array, went up the stairs and finally returned to the stone statue platform in the center of the ancestral god temple. The other great Xia deities were scattered in different stone arrays, leaving only Lin Chia and Ling Bao Tianzuan on the platform. Facing the 12 ancestral god stone arrays below, Lin Chia made a grabbing motion in the air. A streak of darkness rapidly extended, and with a deep rumbling sound, the 13th giant stone array slowly rose from beneath their feet. This stone array wasn't as complex as the others, consisting of only one piece. But as Lin Chia's fingertips danced, it opened up layer by layer like blooming flower petals, revealing a shimmering milky white light cluster floating quietly within. This is... Ling Bao Tianzuan sensed the aura of this light cluster, his expression somewhat puzzled. This is Earth's source, taken from the first crystal that condensed from the universe when Earth was born. It is also the foundation of this ancestral god temple's existence. Earth's source? Ling Bao Tianzuan asked in surprise. What is it used for? It comes from the most primitive nature and is also this world's anchor, the Dark Ancestor slowly explained. Those monsters you call Cthulhu are not from this world. When they enter this world, they are rejected by the world itself. However, their power is strong enough to resist this rejection to some extent. They can even use that strange pollution ability to affect the creatures of this world, causing them to lose their sanity and fall into madness. This pollution power is their trump card. Even we ancestral gods almost fell victim to it back then. Hearing this, Ling Bao Tianzuan immediately thought of Takamagara and those Norse gods polluted by the holy river water in Asgard. Clearly, even deities could not avoid Cthulhu's pollution. But their existence itself doesn't belong to this world. They can pollute living beings but cannot pollute the world itself. This earth source is the world's anchor. It can bind your consciousness to earth itself, allowing your consciousness to ignore pollution from outside, no matter how fierce it is. Ling Bao Tianzuan immediately realized the value of this object. Ignore Cthulhu's pollution? Can it also resist the mist's weakening effect on divine power? I'm not entirely clear what mist you're referring to, but it should, even if it can't completely resist, it can help increase your resistance. This thing is their natural enemy. A look of joy appeared in Ling Bao Tianzuan's eyes. He never expected that the ancestral god temple would have a method to resist Cthulhu's pollution. With the three pillar gods reviving, they would inevitably use the same methods against the great Xia deities that they had used against Takamagara or Asgard. This way the great Xia deities could greatly reduce their pressure. My time is almost up and I still need to talk with this person. You can't take this earth source away, but if you breathe near it for half a day, you can absorb its essence into your body to form an anchor within. I understand. Thank you, Dark Ancestor. Ling Bao Tianzuan clasped his hands in respect. The dark energy surrounding Lin Chia gradually receded, but he didn't immediately wake up. Instead he collapsed to the ground. Ling Bao Tianzuan supported Lin Chia and checked his condition. His breathing and heartbeat were very stable as if he were asleep. Ling Bao Tianzuan didn't wake him up but placed him on the platform next to the earth source. After all, one only needed to breathe near the earth source to introduce the anchor, whether asleep or awake. After doing all this, Ling Bao Tianzuan took out the mother flag and waved it gently. His voice echoed in every corner of the ancestral god temple. Everyone returned to the central platform immediately. Sensing the movement of the mother flag, all the people in the ancestral god stone arrays immediately turned around and walked towards the platform, quickly gathering together. What did you all discover on your side? As the Ling Bao celestial master had calculated, there was no danger inside the ancestral god temple, and everyone who entered all the stone arrays came out unharmed, without the slightest injury. Nothing, Tai Zhenren said bitterly. We were trapped in the stone array until now, never finding a way out. We didn't find anything either, Shou Ping immediately added. There seemed to be nothing left except stones. Same for us. Amidst everyone's helpless voices, Lu Wuwei blinked and exchanged glances with those beside him. Is that so? Lu Wuwei opened the delivery box attached to the back of his electric scooter, and immediately a rich aura of laws spread out. Origin. The gods of Great Xia looked over in shock. Earth origin. How did you find it? Everyone had been walking through the giant stone arrays until now, finding nothing but rocks and some empty ancestral god dwellings. If not for Lin Chia having the night origin to see the dark ancestor, even the Ling Bao celestial master wouldn't have found anything. Yet Lu Wuwei casually pulled out an origin from his electric scooter's back compartment. Is this something that can be picked up so easily? How did you get it? Asked the Ling Bao celestial master, also surprised. I'm not sure either. I was originally wandering around the Earth Ancestor stone array with several gods, then my scooter suddenly got a flat tire. I had just gotten off when I blinked and they were gone. I just kept pushing my scooter and walking inside until I reached a bare stone house and this thing was inside. I just put it in the box and brought it back. Lu Wuwei spread his hands and said, What? Doesn't each stone array have one of these? The gods of Great Xia. Perhaps countless ages ago, each of these giant stone arrays did indeed contain an origin. After all, origins are the soil that nurtures laws, and the ancestral god temple is the birthplace of natural laws, the Ling Bao celestial master slowly explained. However, after the decline of the ancestral gods, most of these origins were lost. Some were left in secret corners unknown to people, while others were taken away by other divine nations. That you could find a lost earth origin here shows extremely good fortune. Lu Wuwei scratched his head. I called you back because there are other things to do. The Lingbao celestial master pointed to the earth source and repeated the dark ancestor's words. The gods of Great Xia and many human powerhouses sat down in place and began to meditate around the light cluster. In his hazy consciousness, Lin Chia seemed to return to the grassland deep within the dark ancestor's stone array. He leaned against the bare tree trunk, slowly opening his eyes. His scattered pupils gradually focused, and his consciousness became clear. Looking at the familiar grassland, moon and branches before him, he was stunned for a moment before quickly standing up. How did I come back here? You haven't come back. This is just deep within your consciousness. A voice came from behind. Lin Chia turned to look and saw that shadow still on the tree trunk, quietly watching him. This junior Lin Chia pays respects to the dark ancestor. Lin Chia immediately bowed respectfully. Although his body had been occupied by the dark ancestor just now, his consciousness remained clear. He had heard every conversation between the other party and the Lingbao celestial master, and naturally knew that the person before him was the remnant soul of the dark ancestor. Seeing Lin Chia bow to him, the dark ancestor's eyelid twitched violently. He quietly moved aside a bit and said, "No need to be so polite. I just wanted to ask about something." "What is it?" After hesitating for a moment, the dark ancestor pointed at Lin Chia's body. "My origin. When can you return it to me?" Lin Chia was stunned for a while, unconsciously stepping back half a step before seriously replying, "Dark ancestor, this origin was given to me by my mother. Even if it was originally yours now, I cannot return it to you." Lin Chia had thought the dark ancestor brought him here to secretly give him some benefits. Who could have imagined that this mighty ancestral god would actively ask him for something? Although Lin Chia had many abilities, this night origin was most important to him and also the ability he used most comfortably. "Mother." The dark ancestor's voice sounded strange. He coughed lightly twice and continued, "This is just a dark origin, at most a toy for you. You don't have much use for it, right? Dark ancestor, you jest. This thing is extremely useful to me." Lin Chia shook his head like a rattle drum, about to say more when he suddenly froze. "Dark ancestor, what did you call me?" The dark ancestor looked into Lin Chia's eyes, opened his mouth but still sighed bitterly. "Never mind. Since you want to play with it, I'll just lend it to you. When you're done playing, I'll come back for it. However, you seem to have only utilized 1 or 2/10 of this origin. How about I help you fully activate it?" Hearing the dark ancestor address him as you with such respect, Lin Chia's brow was filled with confusion, but hearing the last sentence, he still nodded instinctively. "Sure." As the words fell, the dark ancestor's shadow on the tree trunk raised a finger and pointed at Lin Chia through the air. Bang! Lin Chia heard a light sound from within his body, and the night origin that had been dormant for so long began to vibrate rapidly. An extreme darkness instantly covered the heaven and earth. This night origin was given to him by Nyx before she left the hospital. It was said that with continuous refinement he could nurture his own night origin from it, and indeed Lin Chia had gradually developed abilities like Night Flash and Night Sky Descent from this origin. But looking at Nyx's ability wheel at that time, the abilities he had gained so far were not even a third of hers. However, with the spread of this darkness, Lin Chia clearly felt some kind of restriction within his origin being directly broken, and a large number of abilities surged into his mind. Not just night, beyond that Lin Chia sensed more existences. The shadow under the light, the blackness at the bottom of the abyss, the darkness before death. Night origin was the name given to this origin by the night goddess Nyx, but the origin itself came from the dark ancestor. It was the fear of darkness from the most ancient times of all living beings, and night was only a part of it. Under the dark ancestor's personal intervention, this dark origin rapidly awakened within Lin Chia. If Lin Chia's previous mastery of darkness was like gradually nurturing a green seedling, now with the dark ancestor's watering, this seedling was growing at an astonishing speed, directly becoming a towering tree. Fog. Black goat. Kronos looked at the writhing tentacle cloud above his head, his expression extremely grim. Although he had never directly contacted the 3 Cthulhu pillar gods on Earth, just from the disgusting aura emitted by that thing he could be certain that it was Black Goat, Shub-Niggurath, one of the 3 pillar gods. She is the source of the ash snow that polluted heaven and hell, she is the nightmare of the Asgardian gods, she is the puppet master standing behind Odin and Lucifer, She is the monster lurking in the deepest fog, gradually devouring many divine realms. She is the earliest awakened Cthulhu deity on Earth. Back then, the key to the gate, Yog-Sothoth, who was also one of the 3 Cthulhu pillar gods, manifested as fog and nearly destroyed all living beings on Earth, greatly weakening the power of many divine realms in the world. And the one before him now was an entity of the same level. The moment he saw her, Kronos knew that his chances were likely slim this time. Even though he was the former king of Olympus, even though his power was considered top tier among the supreme gods, he still had virtually no chance of victory against that thing. This beast? Kronos' eyes were fixed on Zeus beside him, his gaze seeming to want to tear him into pieces. You actually allied with these things to scheme against me? I am your father. Zeus clenched his fists tightly and said in a deep voice, when have we Greek gods ever cared about family ties? Didn't you also kill your own father to become the god king? I finally managed to make Olympus the only divine realm in the world. If you had continued to stay out of it, that would have been fine, but now you insist on interfering. This is all your own doing. Kronos stared at Zeus in rage, his body trembling slightly with anger. Lucifer, holding a black long sword, sneered. Kronos, your son is much smarter than you. Black Goat has fully awakened. If Zeus hadn't actively brought Olympus to join us, perhaps by now, there would be no Greek mythology left in the world. A divine realm with only one supreme god is simply no match before Black Goat and myself. Kronos coldly looked around at Zeus, Lucifer, Black Goat. How terrifying Black Goat's power truly was, Kronos didn't know, but just the fallen angel Lucifer alone was already very troublesome, not to mention his treacherous son Zeus. His expression changed repeatedly as his hands gripped his cane tightly. In his eyes, a pair of time rings connecting head to tail began to rotate in reverse. The law of time rapidly spread from within Kronos. He narrowed his eyes and his form began to rapidly fade from where he stood. Seeing this, Zeus's face darkened. He's trying to travel through time back to the past. Before he could finish speaking, the center of the writhing black cloud in the sky suddenly split open into a giant mouth filled with sharp teeth. A light cluster shrouded in gray mist floated out, and within it, one could vaguely see bubbles surging. If Lin Chia were here, he would immediately recognize this as the fragment of the key to the gate that had banished their entire team to the end of spacetime. The moment this gray misty light cluster appeared, Kronos, who was gradually disappearing into the river of time, violently shuddered. The surrounding laws of time seemed to be locked, forcibly squeezing him out of the time stream. Kronos stared at the gray misty light cluster, horror appearing in his eyes. That thing could actually seal spacetime. Kronos struck his cane against the void, and the stagnant time laws around him instantly rippled, though much weaker than before. The key to the gate was itself the omniscient and omnipresent embodiment of spacetime, coming from outside the world. Its body fragments had a terrifying suppressive power over this world's time laws. Although for a supreme level being like Kronos, this fragment alone couldn't completely lock his time powers, it was like putting shackles on his body. He could no longer use the river of time to flow backward and return to the past. The time sequence rioter's greatest skill was relying on time reversal to change history. Now, the key to the gate's fragment had directly locked his path back to the past, drastically reducing his power while completely eliminating any possibility of escape. Kronos frowned deeply, glancing toward the moon, but the writhing black cloud had almost covered the entire sky. Give up, you can't escape, Lucifer sneered. With Black Goat here, all heavenly mechanisms and fate will be disrupted. Even Michael won't be able to see you. No one will come to save you. A pair of blood-colored wings grew from Lucifer's back. With 8 wings flapping, his form appeared like lightning in front of Kronos, his demonic black sword thrusting straight at his chest. Kronos's face was as dark as water. Waves of time rippled out with difficulty as his form left afterimages to avoid the strike. After a brief hesitation in midair, he charged directly toward Zeus, his murderous intent soaring to the heavens. Seeing Kronos suddenly attacking him, Zeus was momentarily stunned, then a shadow of death rose in his heart. He wants to kill me. He really wants to kill me. Previously, when Kronos fought Zeus, he had shown mercy and had no killing intent, but now Kronos made no attempt to hide his murderous intent, appearing as if he wanted to perish together with Zeus. Since he was destined to be unable to escape from here, it would be good to eliminate one threat to Earth first. Killing Black Goat was impossible, and Lucifer's power was no less than Kronos's. The only choice was Zeus, who had betrayed him. Seeing this, Zeus's eyes flashed with panic, and his form transformed into a thick bolt of lightning, instantly fleeing into the distance. Face him head-on. Don't joke. A Kronos who had been pushed to the point of wanting mutual destruction was not something he could withstand. Under the writhing black cloud, a black-clothed old man leaning on a cane frantically pursued Zeus, who had transformed into lightning. His time laws rapidly rippled, visibly slowing Zeus's speed, even beginning to pull him back toward Kronos. You ungrateful son, even if I die here today I will kill you. Kronos's eyes exploded with murderous intent as his cane struck heavily toward Zeus's back. The moment the tip of the cane touched Zeus's back, those muscles as hard as rock began to rapidly age, becoming loose and fragile. The cane tip easily pierced through skin and flesh, stabbing toward his heart. Zeus's pupils suddenly contracted. Just then, a black tentacle covered in suckers descended from the sky, tightly wrapping around Kronos's wrist. The latter's eyes narrowed sharply as he looked up. He saw that a giant eye had opened in the black cloud-like mass, silently staring at him. In the dead silence of deep space, a tall six-winged divine shadow holding a golden holy sword stood motionless like a sculpture in a crater. Michael's eyes were tightly closed, his divine power spreading through the holy sword, gradually extending into the interior of the moon, checking for leaks in the seal. He hadn't returned to the moon for a long time, and many places showed signs of loosening, but fortunately he came back in time and quickly completed the repairs. Just then Michael seemed to sense something, suddenly opening his eyes. His golden eyes shone like the blazing sun in the deep space, staring fixedly in the direction of Earth. The law of time has returned to nature? He frowned, his eyes filled with confusion. It's Kronos. How could this happen? Michael gazed at Earth, his burning golden eyes carefully scanning every region, but most areas of Earth were obscured by mist, and even he couldn't see clearly. The only relatively clear area was Great Xia, which appeared calm and peaceful with no trace of divine battle. Could something unexpected have happened in Olympus? That shouldn't be possible. Michael was well aware of Kronos's strength. Although there was still a gap compared to himself, just the abilities of time freezing and time travel gave Kronos nearly invincible power. Even if he encountered an enemy he couldn't resist, he could immediately return to the past and change history. This was why he dared to let Kronos replace him to guard the moon's seal. Although Kronos didn't have much lifespan left and couldn't use his time reversal ability many times, he wasn't someone who could be easily killed. He just returned to the divine realm. Even if Zeus had ill intentions, it would be impossible to kill Kronos, right? Plus, Michael thought of something and his expression immediately became grave. Michael released the hilt of the holy sword, spread his 6 wings, and was about to head to Earth himself, but after a moment of hesitation he stopped. Although he very much wanted to return to Earth personally to see what had happened, doing so would leave no one to guard the moon. If the Black Goat took the opportunity to lift the seal and cause the complete invasion of the K-system gods, Earth would be finished. The Black Goat was not impossible to deal with, but regardless, Michael could not leave the moon's seal for even a step. Michael's gaze moved from the mist to the territory of Great Xia, concern appearing in his eyes. With Kronos dead, Olympus should have completely sided with the K-system mythology. This meant that only Great Xia was struggling alone in the mist, and at this critical juncture the gods of Great Xia had been banished, leaving only 2 heavenly venerable to guard it. Now things had become troublesome. Mist. Elsewhere. In a desolate city ruin, a Taoist treading on golden flowers was slowly advancing forward. His eyes were tightly closed, his face slightly turned as if searching for something. His Taoist robe danced in the wind, with a few strands of white hair escaping from between his disheveled hairpins. The primordial heavenly venerable paused, suddenly opening his eyes and looking in a certain direction. The law of time. Kronos is dead. The primordial heavenly venerable frowned deeply, calculating with his fingers for a while, his expression becoming increasingly grave. After hesitating for a moment he flickered and disappeared. When he reappeared he was already in the sky above a sea area. This was the place where Kronos' time law had returned, and most likely also where he had perished. But strangely, with whom Kronos had fought and when the battle took place seemed to have been disrupted. Even the primordial heavenly venerable couldn't calculate it. The primordial heavenly venerable's gaze swept the surroundings. The mist churned, the sea surged, and the sunlight through the mist was dim and gloomy. The area around was empty with no abnormalities. Not even a corpse had been left behind. What exactly happened here? The primordial heavenly venerable murmured. The primordial heavenly venerable's speculation was similar to Michael's. Although Kronos was old, killing him would not be easy. To accomplish this, it was likely that one of the three pillar gods of the K-system had acted. After searching the area thoroughly without finding Kronos' body, the primordial heavenly venerable finally flew rapidly toward Great Xia. Ancestral God Temple. Lin Chia's consciousness gradually awakened from chaos. He slowly opened his eyes to find himself lying on a soft mattress. Mattress? Wasn't he in the Ancestral God Temple? Where did the mattress come from? Lin Chia was stunned for a moment, looking around. He was indeed still on the central platform of the Ancestral God Temple, surrounded by the gods of Great Xia and human sealing experts who were meditating with closed eyes. When Lin Chia's gaze fell on the spiritual treasure heavenly venerable beside him, he seemed to understand something and his eyes showed complexity. "You're awake." The spiritual treasure heavenly venerable noticed Lin Chia's gaze and turned to ask, "Do you feel anything different in your body?" Lin Chia was startled and closed his eyes to carefully sense for a moment. There's an additional point of light in my consciousness?" Hearing this, the spiritual treasure heavenly venerable nodded with satisfaction. "Good, it seems the anchor has been planted." Lin Chia had already learned about the function of the anchor from the Dark Ancestor's words, so he wasn't surprised by this. However, what concerned him was that besides the point of light, his body seemed to have undergone other changes. The first sensation was that his mental power had clearly become much more abundant. Originally, Lin Chia's level was already at the half-step human ceiling. Unless he broke through the heart barrier to become a human ceiling, his mental power development had reached its limit. But now he clearly hadn't crossed the heart barrier, yet his mental power was already comparable to a human ceiling. This was undoubtedly inconceivable to him. In addition, he could feel that the dark origin within his body had almost completely merged with his physical form, different from when the night origin first entered his body. At that time he only felt that the connection between darkness and himself had become increasingly close, but now he even felt that he had become the master of darkness. He could clearly sense the existence of darkness around him and even transform parts of his body into darkness. It was a very mysterious feeling. "It seems the Dark Ancestor left you quite a few things?" Not only did Lin Chia himself feel this way, but in the spiritual treasure heavenly venerable's eyes, his entire aura had changed, becoming difficult to fathom even for him, very similar to the Dark Ancestor from earlier. Just as Lin Chia was about to speak, a muffled groan suddenly came from nearby. Lin Chia turned to look and saw Wang Mian, who was sitting at the edge, suddenly open his eyes. A pair of faint circular rings, head to tail, surrounded the outside of his pupils, and the time around him began to distort,